Hi, this is Laurie from To the Trade with Nile Johnson. Hi, Nile.
Hi.
Have an awesome show for today. We're going to be talking about something that I think a lot of people cringe when they hear, but finances with Heather Randell. You're the bookkeeping babe of this industry, correct?
That's nice. No, I'll take it.
Hi.
Listen, I've been doing this for a while. Prior to doing what I do now, I was the director of operations for a larger firm. And when my oldest child was little, I felt like I wanted a little bit more of a flexible schedule, and which didn't really turn out to be so flexible because I wound up working for a ton of design firms, right? So it's six of one, half dozen of another. But I love the process of getting new designers who they haven't experienced what they need to do. They've been a design assistant and not doing all the things, right? So I like to get everyone started, put everyone in the right frame of mind and give them all the tools to get started, to get their business started and set up for success, really.
Absolutely. And you really give amazing advice about that financial side of it, because there are a lot of designers, I think, in the beginning that get completely overwhelmed with the financial side and they just ignore it. They don't think about it's all about keeping starting the business and not about actually making profit. So is that what you're saying too?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that they need to do is figure out what software they're going to use.
Sure.
And I use Design Manager for all of my designers. I think it's the best. It does everything that a design firm needs to operate smoothly. Design Manager incorporates project management and a lot of these programs, which you have to use two different programs and combine them. And you're asking for mistakes. You're asking for things to just take a wrong turn and fall through the cracks. With Design Manager, you have all of these reports available that we look at regularly that I send to my designers. And I say, okay, for example, the work in process report in Design Manager, I think it's different in other programs, but for the most part, it's the same idea, but it just is produced in a different way in other programs. But so basically in Design Manager, you get a report and it shows everything that you have paid to vendors on an invoice, your final invoices to them, and that has not been invoiced to your clients yet. So it is so important that we obviously bill everyone monthly for freight charges, depending on your business model, if it's hourly billing, depending on what's going on. All of the merchandise needs to be billed, and it keeps the flow of you paying your sales tax going. Right. So I don't know, I guess I should start maybe from the first part, right, would be collecting money from your clients on proposals, right? We always collect 100%. We are not banks. We're not fronting money for anyone. We are getting 100% on proposals from clients. Now, it's not revenue. It doesn't show as revenue when we accept money and we've gotten paid for that, which is good because once this item is completed and you can close it out with a vendor invoice, you want to close it out with client invoice, it hits your sales tax report. It's all of the things need to happen, and they do. It's a process. But back in the day when I first started in this business, I remember it was the thing to do where no one would bill out the final bill items until the end of the project. I think some accountant somewhere said until that piece of furniture is in someone's home, it's not final. Don't bill it. And that's crazy. When it's complete, once it leaves the vendor, it's done, right? Like we don't care who's paying attention to this. We want to get it to the warehouse.
I mean, that liability for a designer for that many items that it would take to do a renovation, that's astronomical. So
it's crazy.
That is too much. No way that anyone should assume that kind of risk. One bad payer would financially ruin a designer, period.
Yeah. So we like to keep up. Obviously, everything starts rolling once we get our deposits on these proposals. They pay 100%, then we're ordering. Do not order a single thing without receiving payment from your client. And although obviously everyone says they won't, it happens, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so 100%.
And you keep all your clients accountable on that, right? I mean,
They're all great. They're great. No one is fronting money for clients. They're not. Unless it's, I can count on one hand how many times we front things and it's maybe a personal friend of a designer that's also a client, that sort of thing. Oh, we're going to just buy this. I'm very against putting money over on clients.
Great. And we were talking just the other day, we were having a conversation about having this podcast. And we were just like, designers and I think everybody has a hard time talking about money, has a hard time talking about gross profit margin or their own personal finances too, like estate planning and financial planning for their retirement. I know designers with zero money going to their retirement account because they're just juggling. There's a lot of this money has, especially during tough times. And right now we are having a financial tough time for a lot of design businesses across the country. So I think in those moments when it's the more lean years, there are some times where, a lot of things can go sideways and it's the designer pulling money out of their own personal profits to make things continue for them.
I think also designers need to get comfortable talking about money. And my most successful designers are the ones who will say, hey, you didn't pay for this proposal. We need to order items. They're comfortable doing that. I am the go-between for a lot of them. A lot of them don't feel comfortable. That's not their thing, right? They don't want to talk about money. And it's actually,
guy. In sales, it's normal to have, when I worked in sales, I used to be a sales manager at a big company, manufacturer. And I managed a team of salespeople and I was a consumer products manager. So we did a lot of product development too, but I didn't want to be the bad guy to tell someone they were on credit hold or to tell someone that they owed money, we can't ship their products.
We do it all the time.
We threw that to accounting. We're like, oh, it looks like you're on credit hold. You need to talk to the accounting department before we can ship this.
That's me.
Very transparent. You.
Right. And I have no problem. I think also when you're first of all, there's the confident part. Being confident is the most important part of this business, right? If you're not confident in yourself, no client is going to be confident in you. So why would anyone want to sign a contract with you when you're so timid and you don't even know, you're just, okay. And there are always the clients that want to change contract.
Oh my own. Yeah.
Those are red flag clients. Those are the people that it's not, I don't want to say 100% of the time, but a lot of the time, those are the ones that become the troublemakers. And the minute it's like you give an inch, they take a mile. If you are going to change how you are billing these clients, they are going to think every single thing is a free-for-all and they can, oh, why do I have to pay that? Or how much is that? It's going to be a constant thing. Yeah. So you have your contract for a reason, which is extremely important. You need a strong contract and you should go over your contract verbally, sitting with them, because a lot of them do not read it.
Right. Right.
And so then they're surprised when things happen. One of my very good friends is a COO for a design firm. And we had this conversation recently where a client chose someone else, a different firm. And we were talking, because I mentioned to her, I said, when you're giving a client a contract, it's optics. It's the way you word things. It's the way you say things. It could be the same exact thing, but worded differently. No problem, right? She said this other firm put, instead of 60%, so they didn't charge any design fee, right? They weren't charging any hourly or design fee, but they put 1.6 markup. When people see 1.6, they're like, oh, that's so little. It's not 1.6%, it's 60%.
Right.
So after she broke down how much they would spend on time, their design fee or time bill, whatever they were charging, these people were more because their markup was, say, 35% versus the 60, but the time billing would have technically been less.
Right. Right.
It's just funny. I just think it's optics. And sometimes I have newer designers, right? My more established designers don't do per room or anything like that. But a designer, it's okay. It's a $45,000 design fee. But if you break it down by every single room, it was like 1,500 here, 2,500 there, 7,500 optics. It really depends. And you have to read people and know who they are. There's always the ones that are like, we're signing.
Right. And the confidence to say, no, this is why. I remember talking to a designer years ago that she had a client going over that with her with her contract, where she had a straight markup on furniture and she has a design fee. And he was like, what about this piece? I could get this piece like less expensive than the piece look, like some pieces you're going to be ahead, some you're going to be behind. If we spent the time to go over every little piece, any money that you could have ever saved in this project would be gone. It would cost you double, because I'd be spending time becoming the police of the internet to find you the best price on the internet, rather than give you a good product that I've personally vetted and get you at the price that I can afford to keep my doors open. So let's not go over piece by piece and do that. And he immediately backed down. This is a tough guy. And I'm just saying, that confidence level is everything in that game. Like, you just have to stick to your guns.
Yeah, it's people like that. The shoppers, the at-home shoppers, are the worst clients. And I get so crazy with clients who try and do this. I can't. This is a luxury business, first of all, right? So when you go buy your shoes at Bergdorf's, do you walk in there and start asking them how much Bergdorf's paid for your shoes before they marked it up to you? No. We have a contract, right? And it is, most designers, or at least the ones I know, everyone is doing standard markups. It's industry standards. They're not ripping you off or anything. When it comes to design fees, it could be calculated in a million different ways.
Oh, yeah.
That, I would say, is the biggest mystery of all in this business, how people calculate design fees. It could be, and my own designers all calculate differently, and they do it. Everyone has a preference for how they do it. So it could be anything from a percentage of the budget, which is rare, but happens. It could be an estimate of hours, or it's like a million things.
Oh, yeah.
A million ways to do it.
Whenever a new designer talks to me, I usually advise them to go to figure out what the flat fee might be. And then, but really, I'm like, if you go flat fee, you really have to define what that is. Like, how many hours that is, how much work that is. You have to be very careful about what flat fee is. And then you should have other buckets. You should have project management fee. That's separate. This is the design fee. This is the product and how you're going to mark up. And this is the project management, when all of those are different things.
Yeah. I have one of my designers charges hourly for everything. And they're constantly, we do an hourly time billing invoice every month. And then I wouldn't say a number of them actually do time billing. But when I first started working with her, I was anti hourly. I felt like it takes hours to keep track of your hours, right?
Yeah.
So they're very disciplined. It's a constant talking into the phone and keeping notes. One of my newer designers, I said to her, you cannot continue to try and bill out. You're not keeping track of it.
Oh, yeah.
This is not working. So you need to either, if you're going to do this, you must be more disciplined if you are going to do hourly.
And on top of it, when you hire staff too, eventually, then you have to trust them that they're keeping track of hourly, which is also difficult. So it can get really messy really fast, I think, with hourly billing, for sure. And you also feel like you're nickel and diming the client. And like Nile and I, we've talked about this in the past. What will end up happening is they will look at the hours they actually did spend, and then they'll start shaving it off because they feel guilty that whatever that task was actually took 10 hours. And they're like, oh, 10 hours to select the sofa. Like, that just seems outrageous. Like, I can't bill them for that.
The less information, the better.
Yeah.
It's all going to be the same at the end. It's just very hard when it comes to, you don't want anyone to feel like they're getting ripped off.
No.
But you also need to make money. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's why I think figuring out a design fee is your best bet. But again, you just never know how people will take that.
Yeah.
But again, the design fee has to be spelled out very clearly in the contract, because you are getting, say, 3 schemes per room. We're not, once that goes, you go past that, for people who can't make decisions, they have the pause clause that's in contracts. If designers have schedules, they have other projects that they need to get to. If there's a client that is never making decisions or not getting back to them, all of that should be spelled out in the contract, and they should be telling them verbally, if we cannot get answers, we cannot do our job. And if you can't make a decision after 3 schemes, we're happy to, we will pop in fabrics and change them, but 3 is max. Then we start charging hourly. You have to cover yourself. It can't be a free for all. And your contract should also have an expiration date, 1 year, period.
Right.
That I think is a great thing to put on there. Once we have to renegotiate, because you never know when these things are happening or they're going to go awry, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
always want to be, obviously always want to cover yourself, but the contract will do that. But let me tell you something. I've had situations where with terrible clients, and and clients are breaking up, and the designer is very concerned about getting their name dragged through the mud. That's another thing to put in a contract about.
Yeah, that
however it's phrased, right?
Wendy had had come to us too, that like we shouldn't say anything bad about each other, and that clause, and those kinds of things are so valuable. You don't realize it, I think, when you first start. You don't realize
until you get your first horrendous client.
Yeah,
your first client that is making you cry at night. And I always say,
that can be a repeat client. Just so you know, that could be somebody you worked with. I have a designer friend of mine who did 3 different projects with this client. They were childhood friends. And then in the 3rd project, which I have seen photos of, and it is stunning, he wrote the worst. They just had a friendship breakup, and she wrote the worst, most nasty, personal review that I've ever seen for a designer ever.
Horrible.
And I just thought, and she's like, what do I do in those situations? And there are some things you can do. Google does let you respond to reviews, so you can respond to that review. You can dispute the review, because you can say this is based on fraud or based on personal reasons or things like that. And Google will listen to sometimes to disputed reviews, depending on how you word that.
That's to your business. You know,
Yeah.
It can. And then the last recommendation I always have is bury it. You can get reviews from colleagues, you can get reviews from vendors, you can get reviews from anybody you've given design advice to, whoever. So friends, family, whatever, and just get 10 new reviews. Quickly.
This is why I always say I do finances and operations, but I also moonlight as a therapist, because the minute there's a horrible client, I'm on the phone with my designers, and I need to make them feel supported and feel better about this. And also they know that I've dealt with this before with other designers. So,
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So it's not going to tank them. And because
I have to let them know that.
Yeah.
I have to let them know. I want them to feel better.
Yes.
I'm the biggest cheerleader. You're right. They're horrible. This is insane. I've never heard of anything like this. And I've heard of a lot of different things, and it gets crazier all the time.
Sure. I think
It does.
that just came up in our community today. Somebody was saying that they're really burned out. They've never dealt with crazier clients. They've never had as many issues with clients before, and they're feeling really burned out. And the reason we started this podcast, Nile and I, was we were taking the temperature of the design industry, and I think a lot of people are feeling this way. I think the inflation rate is causing people to have less disposable income, and they're getting a little bit more conservative about how they spend their money. And maybe we're all bombarded with information all the time, and that leads to fatigue and decision making. So I think a lot of people are dealing with that. I really do. And I think it's scary for people when they don't want to make the wrong decisions. And it's leading designers to be very unhappy. Are you experiencing that with your designers?
No, I think they're all good. We've had a few situations over the past year where, again, repeat client, the first project went great. And then the second one, it was bad. And designers do a lot of things, most things behind the scenes. They don't see the work, right?
Yeah.
I think this particular client was upset that she wasn't hearing from her. And we are in between processes. You'll hear from us.
Right.
We have to do one thing, then we have a lot of work to do. We have to do another thing. So things like that. And then I had to send an agreement. A client was from another designer and not that she's new to the industry, but new to having her own business. We had to send basically an agreement giving her a refund for something. And then, because again, it's always the designer not wanting to deal with it and not wanting to rock the boat and
Messy.
let's just get out of here easily.
Sure.
Step away. Yeah. And we've had that too, where all of these people,
there's a power imbalance sometimes, like we have talked about before, because sometimes the clients have more money than the designer. The designer is just starting out, and we're talking like a 1% wealth client. I've had clients threaten litigation from a designer just because the designer doesn't want to deal with it anymore. Like they just client will make decisions, like they can't wrap up, and they're threatening litigation. They're trying to get out without any of a lawsuit. You know what I mean?
Every time this happens with my designers, and again, I don't want to say it happens all the time, but I've been doing this for 20 years. There's been a handful of times. I feel like recently, suddenly there was a few of them.
Sure.
But I just always feel really bad, and they just don't want their name dragged through the mud.
And also it's that confidence hit too. But it's your reputation for sure. But it's also like that empowerment you have to go into that next client when you know the last one was so bad. And it's like the courage to do that. You have to find it within yourself to have that courage to go back and say, you know what, I'm good at my job. This is not me. This is the situation that we were.
One of the things also that I think is extremely important, and we always do this, we put a memo on our proposals and invoices. If you basically saying in so many words, if you pay this, you are approving every item on here. Right. The contract says obviously that everything is non-refundable. If it is, especially obviously if it's custom, but anything else, we can request that the vendor take it back. It usually has a restocking fee.
Is so smart. That I just really want anybody listening to pay attention to that. Like you have your contract, but you're also using the invoice as a contract to an incremental.
Because you know why we did this? Because it used to be back in the day, we would send out proposals and had a signature line. And so it said something along the lines of, if you send this back signed, you're approved.
Like a PO, like a purchase order.
But who's doing that anymore?
Nobody. Yeah.
The digital age. So you know what? You pay for it. You own it now. That's how it goes. We put pictures. There's photos of everything. If they have a problem, we had a client. She didn't like the wallpaper after we sent the proposal. She didn't like the wallpaper that was going in the back of the bookcase. No problem. Removed. Send it back. Done. Finding you another one. It'll go on the next proposal. You know what I mean?
Right. Your last one.
It's fine. It's fine. We always want to get to protect ourselves and to put all of the wording in as many places as possible.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You just had in the community and on Instagram a designer who the client was away on vacation, and they had selected the paint and they painted the entire great room, which is huge, and then came back from her vacation, doesn't like the color. Nothing else is layered in. The lighting could be changed. All sorts of things could change to make that more agreeable, but the client wants it repainted and doesn't want to pay for the repainting.
So the whole partial install thing is no bad, right? Nile, they need to see the entire. One designer that I work with had a situation where these people moved from the city to Connecticut or somewhere, right? They got a house. The house was not that big, but they didn't want to pay for warehousing. I made a paragraph about warehousing. send everything to the warehouse. Install day, they will get everything. So these things started coming piecemeal, and she's like, this was so, it was too small, too big. I can't even remember now. All I know is that she was seeing things one at a time. You cannot make an assessment on anything when there's, one thing coming. It was crazy. The rug, the old rug was there, which was too small, and the new one that they were getting was bigger. So then they get the sofa, which they think is huge, but the rug is small, and it's really crazy. So I put a whole thing about warehousing, and their clients, they're having work done in their house. We're not delivering brand new furniture to you that's going to get dust all over it. And no, it's going to a warehouse that is insured, temperature controlled. You'll get all of your furniture in the house. And then I feel like, I know we've talked about a lot of different topics, but from on the financial end, people are always confused about billing for warehousing and how we're doing it. Right. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. This is any other expense, right? So I don't know how other people do it. I get all of the freight bills. It goes out with the monthly billing, right? And the other thing is that 10% markup on all reimbursables is standard, right? There's a lot that goes into all of the tracking and the freight and talking to the warehouse and making sure, is there a damage? What do we have to do? Do we have to reorder? That's part of your profit, your time, and it should really be included. Not to mention the fact that I tell my designers, you marking up freight 10%, that covers me. That covers my salary. So it's a lot of money in markup every year if you simply mark up your reimbursables 10%.
And do you find that the clients are not pushing back on that, or?
You know what? I think there's been a couple, but for the most part, it's laid out in the kind of the belt.
Yeah. They're not looking at the whole thing. And
do it.
You should not be afraid to make a profit. That's why you're in business. So don't feel guilty about making profit off of your business. That's why you're doing it. You're making, you have to make a living too. And a lot of times it's especially for the solo entrepreneur, we will ask, how much do you need to make? Like, they're like, how much should I charge? I'm like, no, not how much should you charge? How much do you need to make?
Right. What are your operating expenses? Yeah. How much are you laying out? Let's start there.
How much is your mortgage? How much is your light bills? How much are your kid daycare? Like, you need to know how much you need to make to create a business that can fulfill that amount of money that you need to make as a salary. And then you shouldn't be ashamed for making the salary that you need to make to provide for your family.
No, of course not.
No. So
there's the confidence thing that we talked about. It doesn't just exist in design, right? Anybody who's confident, those are the people that are getting what they want. I think we've all gone through times in our lives, and including me. And I think I got to a point where I felt like my job, it's common to make an hourly rate, right? So what that is dependent on a few factors. However, at this point, I charge flat fees to, I think, probably most of my designers now. I start working with them, we get it. And I raised my rates myself at one point. And I'm like, I don't get paid time off. I don't get any kind of benefits.
Right.
And I'm part of the company, right? But it doesn't work like that. So it's fine. I'm 1099 across the board for everyone.
But you still have to pay that for yourself. You still need to care about your 401k. You still need to care about your medical. You still need to care about your benefits. Like, you need to take a vacation to have rest and relax.
I don't want to be every time we have, it's Christmas week for the holidays or whatever it is. And then I'm like, hey, I'm not work. That's a horrible way to be. And I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And frankly, I might work a lot faster than somebody else who's doing it. So maybe because I'm faster or I could do my job well, then I should get paid less. Why?
Right.
So I think a fair monthly fee for my product is the way that's my business model now. And so I can't do it with everyone. I don't think it's the right thing for everyone. And I have people who just started. Again, I have one of my designers I've been working with for 20 years. We've been together a long time. She was like, no problem. When I would raise my hourly, she'd say, no problem. When I said I would like to go, at a monthly fee, and I broke it down for them. This is how much I generally make. And She was fine with it. I think everyone wants to be fair to everyone, just like designers want to be fair to their clients, but the clients need to be fair to designers too.
Sure.
And you don't get paid for the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour. Right.
Yes.
And that is a really important thing in this business. It's so important. And it's not fair when these clients will say, oh, we want to pay you for your time. Or they'll say, give us your discount and we'll pay you for the whole thing. It's just crazy. It's not up to you. You don't decide the business model.
Exactly. I always say if a client is rude enough to ask that, you should be running them to say back, look, I'm just trying to make a living. Like I need to keep the lights on. I have a business and I have to be profitable too. This is my business model. It's a take it or leave it situation. You know what I mean?
What my designer said, she goes, so you're asking me what my salary is.
Right.
So what this whole thing with this guy, and she wound up not taking it, which I was happy about because I know right away when these things start happening, I could just, see what the future holds with these people. They're insane, right? It's really hard to deal with sometimes. There's a lot of, obviously we have a lot of finance clients, right? So I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had with these finance people who are trying to find holes in the billing and this and that. And again, if you use a software like Design Manager, it is so easy to just say, here's what it is, and I can explain anything you want to know. It's not hard. Let me know. What are the questions?
Yes.
And going back to the thing about designers not wanting to discuss money with their clients, put me there. Have them contact me. I will contact them. We'll be in touch. You don't even have to do it. If you hire someone good, you have to hire a bookkeeper and an accountant that understand this industry. This industry is very nuanced. There is a lot that goes into it. It is not like a normal business, and people do not get that. And I work with accountants who are not interior design accountants, and I work with ones that are. And there's a huge difference. I communicate, obviously, everything to all of these accountants, and it's such a pleasure to work with people who get how it goes and what we need to do. Well, everybody thinks designers are out shopping and going for lunch. They don't realize that this is 85% paperwork.
Right.
And administration.
Yeah. And there are designers out there that love their jobs so much and love the creative process so much, but they have no retirement savings. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Like they're scrambling to make a living, even though they're great at what they do. So that happens also. Do you think that the designers need to do more like forensic accounting with their projects and know? Because I think sometimes they don't know exactly what their gross profit margin really is always.
So once again, we have reports, right, that we're using. So there's something in Design Manager called the profit analysis report, and it has columns that show there's an estimated and an actual column for your cost. And there is an estimated and an actual column for what the client is paying. You can see that whole thing. So if we put in design, I don't know if you're familiar. Nile, do you use Design Manager?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Do you use Design Manager? Have you ever been on it?
I did for a while. I did for a very long time. And then I left before they moved to their web version.
So the web version is still a work in process that they're working on. We have the old school one.
That's what I had. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not pretty. And I know designers are like, this is so ugly. I don't want to use it because everyone's used to the bubbly new versions of everything. I've used other programs. I won't name names, but I had a new designer recently. I tried to use this program and I felt it was a free-for-all. Like I could make things happen in the program, which scared me. I shouldn't be able to do things. They should be set in the software and I shouldn't be able to change things around in certain ways. There are a lot of things I change around, but in certain ways, it frightened me and I felt like it was dangerous and also just so many extra steps. I want to get cut to the chase and I need to know what I need to do. So
I agree.
So for example, the profit analysis report, you can just pull up a project. You can see all of the items listed. What did you put in as the estimated cost? How much did it actually turn out to be? What is on the vendor side, on the client side, and then at the end of the day, what's the total profit for the job?
Right.
Yeah. That's why also markup is, obviously important. It's a huge part of your profit. But when you have, there's a lot of designers, I think, that'll do, say, MSRP, right?
Yeah.
Mine don't. They'll do designer net or net plus, say, 30, 35, whatever it is. I think that designers should be able to make more money if they get a deeper discount, right? But your contract has to spell that out. So if it says designer net, you're having these stocking dealer relationships, great. You are making all these purchases and having these relationships. So you now get a deeper discount. You should be able to make that up without being shady and illegal. It should say designer net plus 35. Now your 35% is bigger because you're paying below what it normally would be for a regular trade account.
Right.
So I think, again, there are always different ways to make money. Maybe certain things in your contract maybe you get a good deal with your upholsterer. And so the markup's larger. It's 40%, but it really should be, again, designer net plus.
Do you think that there should be more standardized ways of charging? I think that designers come to us with this question all the time. Like, a lot of them always feel like they're leaving money on the table. Like they're not charging what they should. They're not sure if they're making the profit that they should. They're not, even in the best case scenario with an accounting software, there's ways designers shave off time all the time. They're not inputting it. They're just not inputting how much time they actually.
See, that's the whole thing with time billing, which is why, unless you're really disciplined, you're just.
But even flat fee, you can flat fee, but you're going to have a set amount of hours that is. And if you're going over in that.
Yeah. Well, the more projects you do, the better you get at it. The more you understand how much time things take. That's what this is all based on, your time. But if people are saying, I've seen people on whatever, Facebook groups and all these things, it's almost like you were saying, they're saying, if you don't think that's a lot per hour, well, it's not the point of how much it is per hour. There's only a certain number of hours in the week, right? So if you think you're going to be sticking to that, there's a ceiling. There's how many hours? You're either going to just inflate your hours, right? And then feel bad about that, or you're going to shave off your hours and you're going to feel bad about that. That's why you have to come up. I think everyone has to learn how to calculate their design fees and have their own calculation. When it comes to markup, there are standards in the industry, right? I think at this point, 30 has become 35, and the 10% on reimbursables. But really, like I said, that design fee.
I don't see the 20% on reimbursables as much as you do, though.
Everybody I know does.
I think that's because of you. I think all your clients do. But I hadn't heard. Nile, do you do that?
Yeah.
You do a 10%? Because I know a lot of designers who do not do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't listen. I know people who don't, but I think it's a really good way to bump up your profit.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's this low amount. Like a lot of times I think people will ignore that because it just seems like 10%.
Right.
Yeah. Again, you always have to be able to explain yourself and what goes into this, right?
Yeah.
What you have to do in order to get these projects done. Behind the scenes is happening all the time. So, you have to educate your clients so they know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like when people talk about, I could buy this myself. Okay, you can buy it yourself, but guess what? Who's putting the entire scheme together? Who's actually the expert here? And why did you hire me if you want to just go shopping yourself? It's not about these individual items. You're paying, again, with the value of an hour. You are paying for someone's expertise, and it's really important.
And you think about the thousands and thousands of designers who go to High Point. You're paying for every sofa they sat on. They're looking at the construction of every product, knowing that fabric doesn't work well with a single stitch. Like they're thinking on such a different level about every single product. It's like a conductor of an orchestra. And when things are going to come in, and the tile has to come in so that the tile guy can do the tile, and the plumbing guy is doing the plumbing before. So all those things have to, they're thinking on such a level of every little piece and how it comes together. So charging the fair amount is absolutely, I always think you have to think back from how much do you want to make. I always think start there. If you're new and you're starting out in the industry, how much do you need to make to pay your bills. Like how much?
Right. Because your business will be shut down if it's in 2 seconds, if you're by you, because you will not be able to live. And there should be joy in this. I love the whole creative process. I don't think I'd be able to do what I do for any other business. I
Love that.
love it. And so I get to see the projects, I get to see what we worked on, right? And it's so much fun and so much fun to be around. I think to thrive in business, creative minds need support from those that understand the creative process, but that lean towards logic and organization. And that's what I do.
And I think also like to be supportive of each other, to be truthful about how much you're making, truthful for where the mistakes you've made on finances, truthful about where you really are with each other. We talk about that, you know, as far as the community goes, like designers need to do a better job maybe supporting other designers in sharing what they're doing to keep their business profitable.
Yeah.
And I think there are lots of conversations that happen at High Point, but are there really those deep down, like, this is how much I set aside for employee benefits. This is how much I set aside for, because the wrong move can put a designer who hadn't leveled up and not done it correctly in a really tough spot. I know a designer last week who told me that she had to let go of all of her employees. It's a hard position to be in.
That's what I think what you do is so wonderful, because it's your Instagram is more of like a chat room than it is just a typical Instagram post. So people are getting valuable information. It's like when you go to a club and you're in the bathroom and like you meet girls that you complimented their outfit, you became friends after.
Yeah, exactly.
And fun. Everybody's so supportive of each other and giving. Everyone has so much experience in different ways, and they're giving all of these answers, and people need answers. New designers need answers. They do not know what's going on. And if they worked for someone else, they weren't in the back looking, they were in the accounting department and were seeing what's going on.
I had a designer that I love. Her work is beautiful, right? And she was talking about collaborating with a real estate agent, and she brought the real estate agent is high-end luxury in Malibu area, like wanting to ask them, she wanted to ask what her fees were, because I can't recommend you if you're not doing the caliber work of the clients that I have now. And she saw her fees and she's, you need to readjust your fees. Your fees are too low compared to this market. Like you have to do that. So she did. She took some advice, and she didn't just listen to one person. She went out and listened to she did a survey of different designers in the area, really looked at the pricing, and she did have to raise her fees. Well, you can be a little bit in a bubble, certainly over time too.
Totally.
We get all so busy with what we're doing. It could be like 6 years and you haven't raised your prices. And I mean, if you're talking now on inflation rates right now, that's nuts. You've taken a pay cut every year to do that.
Absolutely.
So,
but I think as far as, honestly, all the designers I know are so nice and willing to share that I honestly think that if someone called any of the offices that I work with and they said, could I have 10 minutes of your time? I'm a new designer. Could you just share a few things? I have a few questions. They would all say yes.
Yeah.
People share information. How do you build? Somebody
agree.
responded, by the way, somebody responded to, I think I commented on one of your posts. Somebody messaged me. I get messages from people all the time with this stuff, but she was asking all these questions. I said, you know what? I said, do me a favor and email me. So she emails me and I said, you know what? Let's just get on the phone. I was driving home from somewhere. I spent the whole time while I was driving home on the phone with her, but I was able to give her information that she couldn't get anywhere else.
I love that. I thank you for that.
I like to share and support people. Everybody, I see so many talented people. Designers are artists and they're incredibly talented and they should be compensated for their work. Your home, this is the place you spend all of your time. When I see these places that they create, I'm like, oh my God, I would live in any of these all the time.
Sure. And to imagine that they're scraping by doing that, especially in the beginning. There's so many designers that have horror stories about the beginning. Like they just were not making money. Their contracts weren't right. They'll tell you. I have designer friends that will tell you, like, I almost went out of business my first year because I made some major mistakes with my business. And Now, what do you have to say? I don't want
I have so many things to say you don't even know.
to tell us, Nile.
I just don't think that the onus, I really don't feel is on the designer. The education system has failed the designers, because if you're a first year designer, you don't know what you don't know. And the onus shouldn't be on you to know what should be in your contract, because how would you know? You haven't learned that. You haven't learned, and I don't,
Understand.
and I don't know that a lot of designers, I will tell you, because I've talked to them, the established ones don't know that they have a safe space to discuss where they really truly are without being judged, because they feel like Instagram might be a place of posture and positioning versus vulnerability and authenticity,
Well,
right?
it's a
And a lot
highlight
of,
reel, right?
yeah,
It's a
right.
highlight reel.
And so when I talk to some designers offline and we have conversations and they're like, oh, you've done that too. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've had this happen. And so, oh God, I thought it was just me. And you can hear the relief. It's heartbreaking. It's all the things, because it's a shame that people go through the things that they go through alone, thinking that
100%.
it's just them. And it's not just them. I promise you, it's probably every single designer. But the reason they don't share is because they feel like it is just them and they're going to be judged. I think there's so many reasons why we end up where we do, that I
I
don't
think
even know.
I think you're
Yeah.
100% right. When a while ago, Christopher Kennedy, we just saw at Las Vegas Market, we hung out with
Yeah.
him. I remember he made a post on a comment on one of our Instagram a while ago. And even when you get to be like a luxury designer, it's difficult, because then people think, say you're in L decor, say you're in architecture, the epitome of it, you've got reached the top of your game. Then clients that have had you before think that you probably are too expensive. So you have to, in a classy way, put out, I need clients, like I need work, without it looking desperate. And there is
Looking
a lot of
desperate.
posturing. There
Yeah.
is a lot of posturing. There is a lot of, I don't want to look like I don't have it together.
Yeah, which I get, because you obviously are trying. That's part of the marketing and part of the appeal for your
Yeah.
client.
You
But
want
I
to put
think
out there that
also,
you're a successful designer, and
exactly. But it's
yeah,
great to have people like Heather say to you, I get it. Because it's one thing to hear a designer say, I've been there. That's great. That's reassuring. But it is really good to have someone who is in another field say,
I work with a
you
ton
know,
of designers,
yeah,
and
I work with
what
a ton of
they're doing.
designers, and
Yeah,
I'm more left brain, and I do the numbers, and I'm telling you that you're like, it's okay. You're not a screw up. This is a common thing, because like I told you, my project manager called me. I was just driving, and she didn't know that I was thinking this, and I didn't know she was going to call. And she said, I'm just calling you because I've gone through like your Basecamp chats, and I just want you to know that I hope you don't feel like you're like some kind of loser, or if you're thinking about getting out of the business. You've had some really just tough clients who have walked all over you. I just want you to know, I've read through like a few notes. They are really tough. And so I just want you to know that from what I've read, it's not you. The things that
yeah,
I've read, it's them. And I was like, how did you know to call? Like, how did you know I was feeling that? But you need that sometimes
yeah.
from the outside, I think. And
That's
so like
awesome. Go ahead,
yeah.
Carol.
No, I was gonna say that, so that point you made about support and validation, like that's what you give your designers. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah,
It
because
means
when these
wanting to
things
know.
come up, you feel so bad. Like, what did I do wrong? And all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, honey, I've seen this 10 times. Like, don't worry about it. Really,
Yeah.
it's them. It's not you.
Yeah.
And so and they just need to hear that. And I'm very honest. They'll ask me things. One of them these people will not make a decision. The wife said, I don't want drapes, but my husband doesn't want a Roman shade. Do you have any other options?
Yeah.
It's just always something. And what are you
Oh my
doing?
God.
It's always stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think having someone in your business you hire that supports you, and that, again, I try and empower people to know their business. I have designers that never log into Design Manager. I have ones that go in and they process the invoices. So it's very varied of what I do for different people, and how it's basically, the same job in a lot of ways, but it's wildly different for each person because they all want to do different things, and it's their business and they're allowed. And I give whatever they want to do is fine with me, unless I think it's a mistake. But most of the time it's just preference of doing one thing versus another. But I could scan a 20-page Amex in minutes, and I know every single thing that's client related and everything that's, either they purchased for themselves as a personal thing or something like that. But I send them their bills, or again, some of them I send the bill and they go through the whole thing. But I have design assistants that tag Amex and will put the PO number, and they'll enter they'll enter the charges. Because in Design Manager, if you enter in an item, you enter in a markup, or it's an automatic markup for that project, right? You now know exactly what your vendor price is and what your client's price is. So a lot of them, because of the fact of the way this program works, you just put in a PO number and the whole thing pops up, because once you enter the stack, it's all there, right? If things change, I know when I see the charge, if we bought something for $1,500 and I get a charge for $1,950, I know, okay, it's free, but I want to make sure. I need to know what it is. So I have a different process with how I get that information. One of my firms, I had everybody's email password. I just like to hurry up and get it done. I don't want to bother anybody. I want to do my job, and I want it to be as fast and as efficient as possible. I'd log into their email, search the amount, find the invoice. They didn't have to send me every single invoice, because a lot of them match. The charges match what the PO is. But I do different things with different people I want to make their life easier. It's my job to make their life easier. You're there to be creative. I'm there to make sure that your accountant gets everything that they need, and that we keep billing. We don't have anything falling through the cracks. Clients get billed for everything. They get charged for any outstanding freight charges. Obviously, freight charges change as soon as something's shipped. We make sure of that. And we're constantly, some of them do not see the work in process report. I see it. So I know if I'm doing the billing, they'll see the invoice. These are the things that we paid in full to vendors. The client needs to be billed. Again, the client has paid 100%, but there are always these additional charges, which they need to be billed for monthly. We need to get sales tax going, and then we pay sales tax every month. And then there's one quick thing I want to add about sales tax. When I see these designers who allow their clients to be charging purchases, that is the worst of the worst. Don't let your client be charging things. First of all, you have no control over anything if you're letting them use their card. They're paying for the sales tax. Oftentimes, I've heard when people do this, none of my designers do this. You purchase from the design firm, right? You get an invoice from us. It's got sales tax, all of that stuff. When you're letting your clients pay for things directly, you lose all control. And it's not a real business, I feel. Like that's not how it works. And you need to be in charge of dealing with vendors, and the clients shouldn't even know that. And when I see some of my designers will put style numbers, I don't even think they should have any of that stuff. It should be like blue and green flag and it'll have the location, or for bed, whatever it is. And it should be a description and a photo, and there's their price. The less information, the better. You don't want them going online, searching the style numbers, and you have to deal with that. It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth the conversation. I have said, Nile, by the way, that I think Heather should hit up doing more podcasts. I think she should have her own little subscription service or something that does, because like the idea that there's a person out there that cares about this industry and cares about the bookkeeping side. Like the minute I met her, I was like, you're like gold.
Because I've had my nightmares with bookkeepers, and I've had.
Trust me, I come in after the nightmares. Yeah. By the way, I'm always available for my designers. If they email me, if they text me, and I always tell them, if you don't hear back from me right away and you have an emergency, text me. I will get back to you right away. I have a designer I've been working with for probably 5 years. When I got there, she said, I had to get rid of this guy. He was the worst. She said, unless it was a Thursday, he would not talk to me. Like, business does not go on other days. That's crazy. You guys are trying to run a business. I'm here to help. Yeah. Like, whatever you need. Yeah. There's people who want advice, like design and like business advice too sometimes, because you have
talk to so many designers, you have so many in your client base, you can give like financial advice on so many levels too, right?
I think it's really just, I know it sounds crazy. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's at the same time, it's a simple process. My stepdad had a textile business and I worked for him when I was 19, and he was very organized with everything, like anal retentive with the way that things are. And he always would say to me, consistency is key. If you do it the same way every time, it's the same. You know exactly where everything is. You know what happened. You don't have to guess, right? Just thinking back to him having his little stack of deposit slips in his drawer, and he would flip them over and staple them to the bank statement every month, and there's just a process. And now we don't deal with so much paper, but I pretty much almost only print out statements because I need to reconcile them, and I'm marking them up and sending questions or whatever. But it's the same thing. I go through the work in process report and look at the open purchase order report and look at open client departments and look at any of the other reports that we need. But looking at the work in process is so important. Do that every month. You have to look at that, because then that everything is billed to clients that needs to be. And if you're using a good software like Design Manager, it's not falling through the cracks where everything is, because connected to every spec is the vendor side and the client side. And then you see that in various ways in the system. You know what it is.
Now, I have two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one is expenses that are not project related, because that's the one thing that I do miss about. I love the software that I use. I love it. But the only thing that they don't have right now is expenses that are not project related. Like, you could put in project related expenses, but Design Manager, you could put in any expense, right? That was business related. Like,
are you saying that you have to create a spec for your reimbursables?
so let's see, how's this the best way I can put it. So on Design Manager, like if you bought paper for the office, you could enter in the fact that you bought paper for the office, and it's not tied to a project. It's just an expense for the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't. So with this software, there's nowhere to enter in general expenses. It has to be tied to a specific project.
Wait, hang on a second. So when I'm doing a reconciliation, there are a combination of purchase orders, client related expenses that were never in the system before that I have to enter in and bill to the project.
Yeah.
And office expenses, anything that's obviously not, right?
Yeah.
So if you are using a program that doesn't allow you to do that, means that you can't reconcile, there's no reconciliation ability in your program.
You can't put in office expenses because they're not tied. I guess you could create a project at your office, right? But you can't. But this one syncs. This thing syncs to QuickBooks. So I guess that's where you have to put that.
Oh, wait. So do you have the ability to reconcile a bank account in that program?
No, I wouldn't think so, because you have to do it in. You have to sync to QuickBooks.
So it's a project management program that you're using, and QuickBooks is the accounting.
Yes.
Kind.
You can enter expenses in. Why can't you? Are you talking when you say expenses though, office expenses or client? Because you're saying even if it's an expense, you're doing
because I can enter client expenses. You can enter client expenses. There's a place for that. Like, you can enter client expenses. You can see your financials. You put in the estimate. Like, so I estimate that the club chair will be $1,500, and then we found a club chair and it was $1,300, so we're $200 under. And then I paid for it. Okay, what was the PO? It was this PO, and then it's been paid for. Where is it in the process? So it is a financial software and a project management software, but the only thing it's missing is the fact that you can't enter in the expenses that are not project related, which I think is a big chunk of your operation. You don't.
It sounds to me like it is really a project management software, and
more so. Yeah.
It's not really. That's why I worry about those kinds of software, because doing a reconciliation is your checks. It's your checks and balances. Literally,
yeah.
Right. So if you don't have that, like, how how are you accounting for everything? I guess you're doing your reconciliations in QuickBooks, but so is the QuickBooks being uploaded into your program, or is your program going into QuickBooks? Your purchases for the POs and whatnot.
You can sync your purchases into QuickBooks.
Okay.
So when you go into QuickBooks, it just syncs that way.
So then your expenses should be going into QuickBooks.
Which is where you can put them. But the thing is, when you look at your financials, because there's a place where you go look at your financials for the project.
Your operating expenses aren't in there.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's not there. You can see everything else. Hey, am I over? Am I under? And was I on target for this project? And then you go down the line, and then you just can't see your operating stuff. Yeah,
I think so. I think personally that my opinion on this, Nile, is I think this is something you need to put in a request for.
Well, I did. I think it but I've put in a lot of requests for a lot of things to them. And I think they're sick of hearing from me. I think it's
kind of happy to hear from you and get real. You're a real.
They're let me say, they are very receptive, and it's come a very long way.
You could tell me who it is. Let me get all.
I will. And it added a lot of stuff, and it's probably the best thing out there, I will say, honestly, next to, in terms of what they offer next to Design Manager. But I think this part needs to come from someone with a financial background, because they couldn't get why I felt operating expenses needed to be added. They just didn't get that. And I think what you said, I'm going to tell them to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, you have. With Design Manager, when you have, and Laurie, I know you're familiar with it, but I'm just, for anybody that's listening.
Go ahead.
You put in a spec for each item, right? You have a project, and under that project, you're able to put in an item for everything you buy. In that item, right? So you put in a spec. First thing, spec number 1, you put in a description, and then you're putting in the net price. It's got a box for markup. So when you set up that project, it automatically, you don't have to manually enter that in. You say it's your house, whatever, 35%, that's your markup, fine. And then there's pull-down menus for free. So for free, you can set the markup 10%, right? Now you've got your net price for your merchandise. It marks it up automatically 35%. You pull down, you know what the freight is. It marks that up 10%. You now have the vendor side and the client side, right? Each spec has the vendor-facing side and the client side. So the vendor side is what goes on the PO. The client side goes on the proposal, and then the invoice if they see that, right? That's how that works. Then once all of that's in there, you can go, the client pays, you go to the proposal screen after you put your spec in. You tag, all those items are listed now in the proposal screen. You tag the ones that you want to put on a proposal, accept it. Now you have a proposal with all of that stuff. The client's price is on it. They don't see your net pricing. Then the client pays you. You accept the money. You put money in because, again, you're putting anything financial that shows up on a statement somewhere is going into the system. So you deposit the money against the proposal. Then you can go to the PO screen. All of the items are sitting there again. You tag the ones that you want to create a purchase order for, and it can just print them all out at one time. Done, accept. There's no repeating anything. And then I go in when every month is done, and I go in and reconcile the bank statement, reconcile the credit card bills, everything that's on there. And it's going to be a combination of things. Now, there will always be things like you went to a site visit, you have to charge them for gas, or maybe you're charging them for lunch. However, everyone's different, right? So you can enter in through the vendor invoice screen an expense that then you can attach it to a project. So you bypass the whole proposal. You don't need to do a proposal for the client. You don't need to do the PO. But what it does is it creates a spec for that item. And then there it is. It's sitting there. It's on my work in process report. I know I need to bill it to my clients. When we do the monthly bill, it automatically attaches to the project. If it's rent for the office, it's just a regular office expense. I go and I enter in a bill and I pay it. It has nothing to do with the projects. Yep. But all of these things, they live somewhere, right?
It's nice.
Figuring out based on office expenses and project expenses, how much their growth are. Do you do an analysis of here's your gross profit for this month?
So we have income statements and balance sheet. We have all, it's like a real account. It's a real accounting software, right? So we can print out reports for everything. And then going down to a project level, we do profit analysis on each project to know how much profit we're making.
Yeah.
And the reports are insane. In that
Yeah, I
software.
remember the reports being pretty detailed, but
They're insane.
and you're also doing like full, like, this is the studio's profit for the month. This is the studio's, like, all the projects. So it's not just one project, but like all the projects. This is where the profits and losses are for the whole month.
Right.
Yeah.
Which that's a good segue into the second question I have, because anybody listening, they're going to want to know, if they don't have design manager and they're interested in working with you, is that a deal breaker? I love that.
And let me preface this, because I'm going to I'm pressuring Heather to start something bigger than even her bookkeeping. So maybe if she does do some sort of membership fee, that would be financial advice type things more than just bookkeeping.
Again, one of my friends is the COO of a design firm. And so we've had many discussions and we're still talking about it. She's great on the business end and contracts and all that stuff. So the two of us are probably going to be doing something together soon, which
I knew about this. So,
so I'll let you know about it. But as far as honestly, Nile, it is, to me, I'm too old to learn new programs. And when something isn't broke, I don't want to fix it. It's just too.
Whatever you're comfortable with, like, on it, learn something new. Sometimes it just takes more time. And if you have enough clients with what you already know, then I think that's perfectly acceptable. But there are people who do have different software that have contacted you, have gotten great advice from you. And I think with your new venture, that there's openings for just to have someone with your financial background that cares about this industry.
I do.
On this platform.
Again, it's not even, forget about the math, right? It's like I said, there's a few processes. It's not this huge undertaking. If somebody is just setting you up correctly, putting your correct sales tax codes in and doing what you need to do, paying your sales tax whenever it's due, monthly, quarterly, and making sure your markups are good and correct and you're billing properly for that. I've seen where people have somehow a design assistant, it wasn't set up, or whatever program they had, the markup wasn't in there. They charged the client a net price. Could you die?
I want to die, right? We've been listening to that. That's terrible.
I've had a friend do that, and she had to go back and say,
no,
hey, it
was a mistake.
Unfortunately, it was a mistake. And the thing that saved her was that it was very transparent in the contract, that this is what I charge you, and then this is what the markup is. So the client was like, oh, they weren't thrilled, but they were like, okay, no problem. Because it was very transparent. But
but it's scary when that happens. And who wants to have that conversation, which is another whole thing. I think the other part of whatever you do, Heather, will be giving that advice so that designer can be confident to have those conversations with the clients. Now, some of it has to be that, because that's the hard part, is to talk to somebody who's worked with so many different design. Nope, you're going to go back. You're going to talk to the client. You're going to be fine. You're going to deal with this with the financial.
I work with a lot of designers that do not have a problem with that. And even the ones that don't have a problem, it's just easier when it comes from me. So if you have someone there that also can be like, click, this is pulling things up while I'm talking to clients. It's just easy. I know what I'm looking at, maybe faster than they do. And it also seems more professional, right? When you have somebody speaking on your behalf and you're not. But by the way, I think it's totally fine. I have designers that they send out everything. I send it to them and then they send it out. And I love that. They know what's going on in their business and they have no problem talking to clients, sending them stuff, asking for money. So like I said, everyone's different. We work it out either way.
Love that.
There just has to be a process. There's a few, like a handful of things every month that you just need to do. You need to get reconciled. You need to look at these reports. And if you're not looking at them, your bookkeeper's looking at them and saying, hey, what can we bill this stuff out? What is this? The client needs to be billed for this. That's the one goal, is to make sure that your client is paying for everything that they've received. you
Right.
know?
Absolutely. And nothing's falling through the cracks and you're making money.
Which a good software will do.
Yeah.
It can't fall through the cracks. You're not transferring it over anywhere else. So
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Heather. I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it. And I know people are going to be coming to you with questions once they hear the podcast. I can't say thank you enough. I really do.
You're very welcome. It was great talking with you both.
All right. And now remember, everybody, to go follow Heather and make sure we're going to put all of her information and make sure that if you do have financial questions, you ask her. Because she knows it. She knows her stuff and she knows the industry.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Chat.